recession, the R word. And yes, we're in recession. I couldn't believe the front page of the Post, or the People's, the Pravda Daily, we should call the Post in Wellington, run by Stuff. Instead of saying country slips into recession as the headline this morning is National fails to land blows. So their editorial staff goes straight past the recession to, National's not going to win the election on the back of a recession. It is just such blatant editorial bias. It makes Radio New Zealand's digital staff's coverage of the Ukraine look like a paragon of journalistic virtue. Absolute crap headline and crap story from Bridie Whitten on the front page of Stuff this morning. A recession is notable. It is a real thing. But what does it mean? Well, I don't know. I'm not an economist. I can't crunch numbers. But I tell you someone who does is independent economist from Bagrie Economics, Cameron Bagrie, and he joins us on the line now. Hey, Cam, nice to talk to you, mate. How's it going?
Oh, not too bad. Looking forward to another mighty Wellington day.
All right, Cameron, we all knew this was coming. In fact, in some ways, our Reserve Bank said we're going to make this come. As recessions go, she's not exactly a blockbuster, is she?
No, it's not. And it's what I call the appetizer on the main course. We've satisfied the technical definition of a recession, but a real recession involves job layoffs, higher unemployment, a real squeeze across the economy. Now we're seeing a bit of a squeeze, but you've still got an economy here that's somewhat still in the party zone because we're still operating off a real high level of activity. And levels matter. So talking to a lot of businesses, yes, things have started to tighten up a bit, but they're still pretty busy. Where they are today is that they're slightly less busy than where they were 6 months ago. But it's not a poor outcome. I still think we've got the main course, which is 2024, because to break the back of inflation, you've got to dish out really tough times. And we're entering that phase, but we're not quite there yet.
Yeah, certainly a lot of people saying job losses are a measure of a recession or the real measure of a recession. And, of course, we're in this unusual situation where we have what is, by New Zealand standards, a labour shortage, don't we? So that particular piece of pain is being delayed.
Yeah, but it's around the corner because the Reserve Bank, the Treasury, most of the forecasters are predicting to get inflation down, you've got to cool the labour market. That means job layoffs around the corner, and we're already starting to see the early signs that it's coming. So if you look at the company tax take of the government, or the general tax take of the government over 2023, it's now starting to underperform expectations, coming below their forecast. And there's a big gap opening up between what company tax was projected to be versus what company tax is. And of course, we know if firms start making less money, well, they're going to turn attention to costs, and labour tends to be a pretty big cost. So this is just how the cycle unfolds. Sure.
Yeah.
So
in some ways, have the worst, if you like, on the ground effects of recession, or has this been delayed for political reasons till after the election? Should we be toughening up and having the pain now?
Well, the Reserve Bank's been dishing out a bit of pain in the form of higher interest rates, which has seen house prices move backwards pretty quickly. And of course, you talk to anybody in the construction sector, their pipeline of work in regard to residential dwelling new builds is starting to dry up rapidly as well. Yes, so we know what's around the corner. It's sort of here. But once again, Sean, we've got to differentiate between the change in activity versus the levels.
Yeah.
We've had such a glorious party time for the past 3 years. We've ironic the economy up on confetti. The low interest rates, printing money, the government borrowing a whole lot of money and spraying 60 to 70 billion down of COVID relief money around. Yeah. It's going to take a little bit of time for that to whistle away out of the system. Meanwhile, you've got ideology is being checked by economic reality. Your ideology is we can whack costs onto firms and there's no economic consequences. Well, there is an economic consequence. We're seeing it through the tax take. Costs go up, profits go down, less tax. Less tax means less money to redeploy across the general economy.
Yeah. Cameron, while I've got you here, I was kind of surprised yesterday, and I suspect it was a bit of a PR move around field days, claims that primary exports were at sort of record levels, making up, I think, 17% of the country's GDP. I looked at the agricultural and the primary production sector and the problems we've had with yields and harvests because of weather events and things. And I wondered if those figures weren't affected simply by inflation and perhaps didn't represent a real increase in productivity or volumes in the primary sector. Have you had a chance to look at those?
Yes. So if you ever look at primary sector export volumes, they've been basically flat for about 5 years.
Yeah.
What we're seeing at the moment is that the dollar value of exports, and this is what MPI is looking at, is up solely because the New Zealand dollar is down. But of course, what matters to the rural community is not just whether you get money coming in the door, it's what's going out the door on the other side, whether it leaves some money in a tin on the bottom line.
Yeah, and what can that money buy? What's that money worth? What can it buy for you? Yeah.
Yeah, and this is where we've got a fundamental problem across New Zealand at the moment, is that firms are getting absolutely savaged by higher costs. And this is one of the reasons we've seen company tax and what's called other persons tax is starting to undershoot expectations. And it's those usual suspects. Firms are now paying less terminal tax and they're paying less provisional tax because their profit numbers are deteriorating quickly. Yes, there's still revenue coming in the door, but it's been absolutely savaged by costs. And what is going to take place in the next 12 months, and this is the next stage of the economic cycle, is that we're going to see a lot of cost cutting.
Right. Okay, so the firms will get rid of all the nice-to-haves but not must-haves, and in some cases get rid of the must-haves to cut corners and try and make it through, right?
Yeah, and to be fair, some of this needs to take place, Sean, because I know people are throwing around the dreaded the recession word. Look, we've been in an abnormal environment for 5 years. We're now going back to a degree of normality. Yeah, that's actually not a bad thing.
Yeah.
That's a good thing to get back to something more normal, conventional.
Yeah.
So I'm calling it a reset. Yeah, and resets both offer opportunities along with challenges along the way.
Yeah.
So let's not sort of wrap ourselves within the negative narrative in regard to recession. It's a reset, and it's going back to something more normal and conventional. That's not a bad thing. That's a good thing.
Yeah. Cameron, are there going to be more interest rate rises? Is the RB going to put the official cash rate up again, or is that part of this equation over?
Well, the Reserve Bank themselves are saying they think they've done enough to cool their economy. You know, I think the governor's words were, we need to cool our jets. You know, we're seeing that. How quickly that diffuses into getting inflation back down is still the million-dollar question, because there's still a fair bit of inflation stickiness out there persistent. And it's not like we've got to get inflation from 3% to 2%. It's still up at 6.7. You know, the core measure's around 5.5. You're getting it from 5.5 to 2 involves dishing out a fair bit of economic pain. What we've seen in the past week, Sean, is that a couple of central banks, the Bank of Canada, the Reserve Bank of Australia, who thought they were done lifting interest rates, are suddenly back lifting interest rates.
We got to give it another tweak. So that could happen here, couldn't it?
Yeah, and the big risk, and the International Monetary Fund and the Reserve Bank has pointed out as well, is if the government does not stick to a tight spending script, i.e. diet, and they spend a lot more at the upcoming budgets, odds are the Reserve Bank's got to do more to take money out of the economy to balance on the other side. So there's a big risk whether we see tax cuts or spending increases from either side of the political spectrum. The more money government pumps into the economy, the more likely interest rates are going to have to move up a little bit more on the other side.
Yeah. Cameron, throw into all of this an election, right, where people are going to be going around making promises, etc., and using the recession and economic conditions on the campaign trail. Does that make it more difficult to go through whatever we're going to have to get through for this reset?
Yeah, it does, because and it's driven by a couple of things, Sean. Look, number one, it's an election. So elections, you tend to see politicians throw candy around they throw out the elections. The second thing is a little bit more problematic, and it's a global phenomenon. We are now dictated by what's called populism-driven politics. And populism-driven politics is a lot different to the traditional politics, because the traditional politics had a lot more substance. The populism stuff is just all about promising everybody everything under the sun. And what we need, we go through what's called an economic reset. You can't promise people everything under the sun. Sometimes you just got to say to people, well, look, we're going to do it tough all around. We're all on this together. This is what you're going to do. This is what you're going to do. But it's one team, one dream, but it's called leadership. And what you see with populism is that you don't see real leadership for the common good. You see populism-driven politics to try to get votes out of certain segments, and we've got to park that.
Yeah, well, good luck with that, Cameron. Look, my final question, and a practical one, and I ask it to you as someone who knows about economics, but also, just about having a family and being a New Zealander. For the average family, if there is such a thing, or for the average New Zealander, does the figure that came out yesterday, the recession, make any difference to their lives, or do they have to keep on, in a practical sense, doing what they've been doing anyway?
Look, it's a March quarter number. We're now at the end of June. So it's 3 months plus in the rearview mirror. What it tells us is that things have slowed up. Yes, we've known that all along. Once again, I think the real story here is 2024, and things are going to tighten up further. We've gone through what's called a series of supply shocks. Whether it be Cyclone Gabrielle, the rain, destruction in the Hawke's Bay, COVID, Mother Nature's challenges. Now, supply shocks make you poorer, not wealthier. The problem is that we all think we're wealthier because there's been all this liquidity floating around the economy for the past sort of 3 to 4 years. We haven't woke up to reality. We just need to reset a little bit. And resets take a bit of time to sink in, and they're difficult. So we need to see a lot of leadership at the top, and it's not just the politicians, it's out of the business community, it's heads of households. The next few years are going to be tough, but ironically, there's a whole lot of opportunities here to fix a whole lot of things. Probably top of mind, Sean, is the education sector. And it blows my mind at the moment, the way the kids are being used as a pawn now between the government and the teachers.
The teachers' unions.
It's like a marital split where one parent's decided to throw one of the kids into the mix and try to use it for leverage. It's just ridiculous.
Boy, on social media you get the feeling that amongst parents with school-age kids, they are well over this.
Well, and if we're going to, getting rid of inflation is the near-term challenge. But if we want to make New Zealand a better, more productive place and fix poverty, then there's no better investment than we can make in the education system today, because that's going to define where New Zealand is in 20 years. And if you look at the attendance achievement numbers today, you're going to be really worried about where we're going to be in 20 to 30 years. So the more airtime the likes of yourself, Sean, and other media give education, the better I think it's going to be heading into election, because we need to see some real change. I hear you, Cameron. Hey, Cameron, always good to catch up and get, I think, a really good and in some ways unemotional analysis of what's happening in the economy, because there is plenty of heat and noise and fluff when figures like this come out. So thank you incredibly for your time. We'll talk again soon. All the best, Sean.
Cheers. That is Cameron Bagrie, the principal, the founder of Bagrie Economics, former bank economist. Just give or take, and it makes a really good point. The 0.1% drop in growth is 3 months ago. So what's happening now? We're in the middle of that. We won't get those figures for another 3 months. Yes, he says, despite the Reserve Bank saying that was it for interest rate rises, a number of central banks around the Western world have actually had to renege on that, and that could happen here. Has a good crack over education. And I guess for us as individuals, the thing is, and geez, if I get it personal next year, it's going to be worse, because we're coming off this sugar hit high that we've had for our economy. I don't know, what can we do? I guess you just sit there and you economise, and you're careful about how you spend your money, which you should be anyway. It's all right for you, Ben. You don't have a mortgage. You know, you're just footloose and fancy free. You can go to Aussie or something if you want.